Hi there, I'm Dre, the host and founder of the Dragon Network. So today I want to talk about big data and the 5 V's. And there are 5 terms that you need to keep in mind when you're working on big data projects or big data initiatives. So keeping these 5 V items in mind throughout when you're doing all of your design, your requirements gathering, your KPIs and things like that can help you make sure that you're staying on track throughout the entire project and that you're not going to get lost along the way. So before I get started, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe to my channel, go ahead and do that now. And as always, throughout the course of the video, if you like the content that you're seeing, please hit that like button so that I know and can see what types of videos you guys are reacting to and plan better for the future. So now that we have that out of the way, let's get started on the 5 V's of big data projects. So these 5 V's aren't 5 V's I came up with on my own. They are fairly common in the world of big data. So if you do want to look a little bit more into it, you can just Google 5 V's of big data and you'll find a ton of information out there on what to keep in mind. But I thought I would just give you a brief synopsis in case you're embarking on one of those projects right now and just need somewhere to start. So with these V's, we're going to go in no particular order, so don't read anything into that. But first up on my list is going to be volume. So when you're considering a big data initiative or a big data type project, the volume is pretty self-explanatory. You need to quite literally look at the amount of data that is going to be considered to be in scope of that project or initiative. And when we're talking about the volume, we're looking at it in terms of what volume of data is going to be captured, what will be processed, what needs to be stored short-term, long-term, what needs to be analyzed, what will be outputs, volume across the board. But keep volume in mind throughout many of the things that you're looking at. It's going to be a critical factor for your planning, your architecture design, the implementation efforts that you're going to look at, as well as your data governance that you're going to set up. So volume is an important one. And volume is actually one of those things that can very quickly run away with a big data project because you may start out with one set of data in mind and the volume associated with that is fairly known or fairly contained. But in a health environment, before too long, you start adding more and more data sets and that volume grows exponentially. So keep volume in mind throughout everything if you want to have a successful project and have successful outcomes at the end of that. You can always phase things later. Next up is velocity. And so velocity actually refers to the speed with which the data is produced and subsequently processed. So it is also looking at things such as the speed of data turnaround time for subsequent use. So how fast is data coming in? How fast is data being processed once it's there? And how fast is data going to be presented to the users that need to leverage that? So when you're considering velocity, there are a number of different things that are going to come up, a lot of them related to architecture, but some of them are going to be related to the use case. So if you're querying something large, do you need that query to turn around results very rapidly, very quickly so that it can be used in real time? Or are you okay with the data being turned around in a little bit longer time frame? So is it something that you need in, less than a minute? Do you need it in 30 minutes? Is it okay if that data processing and that data turnaround takes 2 hours? So that's something that's really going to depend on the volume of data, the type of project, and the use cases that you're looking at. But velocity is something to keep in mind for every big data project you're working on. So next up on my list, again in no particular order, is variety. The variety of data is extremely important when you're looking at everything to do with a project or initiative. You need to understand whether the data that's being considered for scope inclusion is structured or unstructured, and the type of data that is. So is that data textual data? Is it image data? Is it video file data? Is it audio data? Is it all of the above? So you can see that by looking at that and by keeping that in mind, you're going to have a lot of decisions to make and you don't want to lose track of that throughout the initiative. So if you're looking at something that's purely textual and structured and unstructured, you're going to have a different set of requirements than if you're also incorporating DICOM images or video files or perhaps audio recordings. So keep in mind the variety of data type is going to drive a lot of the decisions you make from an architecture perspective as well as a data governance perspective. And you don't want to lose track of that. You don't want to set something up focused on one particular data type and then have trouble trying to expand on that or grow over time. So variety is important, hence the reason it's one of the 5 V's. So next we have veracity. So with health IT projects, and particularly those that are looking to leverage artificial intelligence or machine learning, when we embark on those types of projects, veracity is important. And what this is really focusing on is making sure that the data that you have and the data that's being included is accurate and has the level of quality that you desire. So if you think of the term garbage in equals garbage out, that's what we're really talking about when it comes to veracity in this particular V. You want to focus on whether or not there's inconsistency in your data elements, whether you have uncertainty around some of your data definitions, if there's deviations from a standard that you've got. You want to be aware of what those are and what the magnitude of that is and sort of where the parameters are throughout the entire project. It's going to really help with understanding what kinds of tools need to be put in place, what kind of framework needs to go around things, and what kind of output expectations you can have when you're looking at adoption and use of these big data projects. So if you're not keeping veracity in mind and you don't have a good understanding of the quality and the reliability of the data going in, you can unfortunately have some missed expectations on the way out. So veracity is important, transparency is a big one here, and if you have the ability to do it, it's always a good idea to tidy up some of that data before it goes into the platform or into the different application that you're looking at for your big data initiative. Last but not least is value. So any single project that you do, you should evaluate value throughout it. So what's your return on investment? With big data, that's no different at all. The sheer volume of information that is being generated in health IT spaces and is exponentially increasing over time has a lot of organizations focused on projects and initiatives to leverage that data. So there is a lot of time, there's a lot of money, and there's a lot of hype around getting these big data projects off the ground. Keeping the value in mind throughout can help you actually stay on track and not have those be runaway type projects. So because of all these changes, because of the excitement that's around it, I think big data projects and big data initiatives are going to be at particular risk for runaway scope or scope creep, because there just seems to be a never-ending amount of data to be considered. And throughout the life of your project, there's probably going to be more that come up. So understanding the value and what you're actually hoping to get out of it is super important to always keep an eye on throughout the project. And that's because you want to make sure that what it is that you're putting in is giving you the outcomes and helping you to achieve what you set out to achieve when you're done. So you don't want to just pull in data for data's sake and transform data for data's sake. You want to actually have it be meaningful for either the organization, the patient, or society as a whole. And you need to understand what that value is. What's that value proposition sort of going in, and what's the value proposition throughout, to make sure that you don't have a project that sort of runs away from you along the path. So those are the 5 V's that are associated with big data projects. Again, they're not 5 V's that I came up with on my own. You can Google and learn a little bit more about them. But I thought I would just share what they are, because as we embark on some of these projects and as we're involved in working on them, it is important to sort of keep that frame of mind and to keep those considerations throughout. If you ever feel like it's just too much and it's overwhelming and you're not even sure where to start, those 5 V's can really help you out if you decide to focus on one and pass it through. And as long as you keep them in mind throughout, of course, there's other things like project management and all that type of stuff that's going to keep your project on track. But if you don't lose track of the 5, you're in a much better position to have a successful outcome for these big data initiatives. So that is all I have for this week. I hope you learned a little something from it, and I will see you again next week. Have a great rest of your day.